Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Mac and Talk for Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. I'm your host, Chanelle Allen. Mac and Talk is an open forum Q&A conference call for anyone with Mac questions. Whether you're just getting started and maybe you have a Mac and you are trying to learn voiceover, or you're trying to decide if the Mac is the right device for you in the first place. Or, as many of us are, you could be a longtime Mac user with a question about an app or feature. But for whatever reason, no matter where your experience, we are happy to have you here with us tonight, now, or later on via the podcast recording. There are several ways to keep up with iBUG today. We have over 21 events every month, and we're getting to the end of the month, so I won't go over all of the upcoming events, but I would like to let you know about our website, which is ibugtoday.org. There, you can look at the current events link or tab and see what's coming up for the next month. You can also register for a free account, and it is also free to participate in any of our events. Also, you may visit our social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We post our iBug announcements. So Facebook, we are facebook.com/groups/iBug today. And that's a great place, the group, to ask questions in between events or share information that you might find helpful. On Twitter and Instagram, we are at iBug today. And just going back to our website for a brief moment, we do have a Mac and Talk link. And if you access that link, you will be able to join our Mac and Talk discussion group. That is an email list where we entertain Mac questions, just as we do here, and people can share any articles, tips, anything that might be useful. And you'll also find on that page a link to contact me and links to our previous recordings. Speaking of our previous recordings, iBug is in all the popular podcast apps and services, as well as YouTube. If you search for the iBug Today channel on YouTube, you will be able to find us, and you'll also find classes or our lessons from the last Mac class. We're actually just finishing up a Mac class now, but the videos from last spring will be posted. And for podcasts, you can look up iBug Buzz, iBug Cafe, or iBug Apple Workshop, and what we're here at now, iBug Mac and Talk, in your Apple Podcasts, your smart speakers, your Overcast, any of those apps and services will have our podcasts. And as far as our upcoming our upcoming events this week, we have iBug Night at the Virtual Movies on Friday. Come for the pre-movie social at 7:30, followed by the movie, which apparently is a really old one, and I can't remember how old it actually is, but it's called The Shop Around the Corner, and that starts at 8. And for, like I said, for other things, our iBug um, iBug Buzz takes place every Monday night from 7 to 9 p.m. on Zoom. We just had our iBug Mini Buzz on Clubhouse. That takes place the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month from 5 to 6 on Clubhouse. And we won't have anything next week, but on the first Tuesday of December, we will have iBug Mac Buzz on Clubhouse. So there's a lot to keep track of, and the best way to do that is just to stay tuned to our website and social media. But now it's time for you to introduce yourselves, to say who you are, where you're calling from, and if this is your first time joining us for Mac and Talk. Oh, was somebody going to go ahead?
This is Brad, and I'm in Dallas.
Hello, Brad.
Janet in
Kathleen.
Pennsylvania.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. I heard Janet. Was that welcome,
Wesley?
Janet? Oh, and Ashley, welcome.
Wesley.
Oh, Wesley, I'm sorry. Oh dear, Wesley, glad to have you. And you said you're
Just
from
mentioned that
Pennsylvania?
wanted to mention that in addition to this podcast that you mentioned, there's also the Android Insight podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, that's right. Darn, thanks for mentioning that.
Sure.
And Kathy from Pennsylvania.
Okay, welcome, Kathy.
Thank you.
Priscilla from Arlington.
This is Londa from Pennsylvania.
Priscilla, welcome, and welcome, Londa. Nice to have all of you.
And this is Joe from New York.
All right, welcome, Joe.
This is Darcy in Ontario, Canada.
Welcome.
Cliff,
Dan,
Minnesota.
Southern California.
Hi, Dan. Welcome. And who is that speaking as well?
Cliff, Minnesota.
Hi, Cliff.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? Welcome.
Pretty good.
All right. I believe that is everyone. So before we get into questions, I just wanted to do a bit of a demo. I was going to do this last month, but I thought I would do that today. And that
You
is
have
to
started
show
computer
you
audio share.
how we can use our Mac to zip a folder or a bunch of files into a zipped folder or file. So the way we do that is we go into our Finder.
Finder, desktop, bootcamp, volume.
And I'm using the
Actions
Nikki voice. It's a little bit better than one thing that the latest Mac OS update has done is compress the voices that I would normally use, Ava, and this voice sounds a little bit nicer for a demo. So I'm going to go to my Mac training alias. I'll just type the letter M.
Mac training alias.
An alias is basically a shortcut to a location or file on your Mac, and I'm going to now press Command down arrow to open it.
Mac training window, column view, browser.
I happen to use column view. I like it. Once I've pressed the Command down arrow, I need to do right arrow to make sure my folder is in focus.
Applications, folder.
And then I'm on the first item within my Mac training. Today I want to show you how we can go to my focus questions folder. My students are familiar with those.
Focus questions, folder.
They basically are a series of questions that go along with each lesson. But let's say I wanted to just send somebody a link to the zipped file. There are actually, if we open this folder with the right arrow.
List, one item selected. Lesson 1 focus questions doc. Microsoft Word. Lesson 8 mail. Lesson 9 mail part.
9 files in here. So wouldn't it be more convenient to just send somebody a link to one file? Or you could send somebody a link to a folder, I suppose, too. But let's just say we want to zip all of these files into a zip file.
Focus questions group.
And the way we're going to do that, we could have selected the files within the folder. If we'd have done that, it would have created something called archive.zip. But when you actually do VO-Shift-M, or your context menu command, or your, I think VoiceOver refers to it by another name, but anybody who's worked with me will know it is the context menu. It's basically a way to bring up specific menu options that are relevant to the item in focus. So let's do that now, VO-Shift-M.
Menu.
And if I wanted to if I was in a hurry, I could just type the letter C to get to compress. But I'll just show you what else is here.
Open a new tab. Move to trash. Get info. Rename. Compress focus questions.
Oh, and we're already at compress. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll press enter.
Available. Mac training window. Column view. Browser 1 item selected. Focus questions.zip group.
And it made a sound as if it zipped, but also what it did is it opened a separate tab. Your Finder could either open things in windows or tabs. And I have mine set to open in tabs, so if I control tab.
Tab focus questions. Available offline.
There was really no need for it to open a separate tab, but whatever. It's basically open my Mac training folder. There's 2 instances of that.
Tab Mac training.
And
column view. Browser 1 item selected. Focus questions.zip group.
When we go back to where we were, then we are landed on focus questions.zip. Is it important to know that it opens 2 tabs? Well, it might be when you're trying to close your Finder windows, but basically you go to the folder you want, you do VO-Shift-M, and then you go down to compress, and there you go. Or you could go into the folder,
Mac course focus question zip. Student and focus questions. Folder
go
list.
into
One
this
item
folder,
selected. Lesson 1
and
focus.
let's say you only wanted to zip the first couple. So if I do shift down arrow.
Lesson 2 Lesson 3 focus questions doc. Added to selection 3 items selected.
And then we could just zip these 3 items by following the same process. VO Shift M.
Menu.
C for compress.
Compress 3 items.
Press enter.
Less selection deleted 1 item selected.
And it gave that spurious information. There was not an item deleted.
Archive zip.
What we have is something called archive zip, which contains those 3 files that we included in the zip file.
Lesson 1 focus questions
So
doc.
there you go. That's just a little bit of
Microsoft
a rundown on how you can compress or zip a file. When you want to open a zip file, what your Mac will do, you can just do Command O or Command down arrow, and it will, in a sense, create a folder with those files that were contained in a zip file. Hopefully that's not too
Zoom us.
complicated. I am stopping my share. And anyone may ask questions on this or any other topic. And if you have any future ideas for anything you'd like to hear demoed, then let me know.
This is Shri.
Yes, Shri.
So Chanelle, thank you. How do you go about doing that if you wanted to select the first file, the third file, and the fifth file?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Well, what you do is you make sure you've interacted. So when you get into that folder, you do a VO Shift down arrow to interact, and then you do a VO down arrow until you get to the first file you want to select, and then you do the voiceover selection command, and it's kind of a fingerful or handful to press because it's VO command and enter. So you press all those keys on the first file, and then you release up on those keys, but you do VO down arrow until you get to the next file that you want to select, and then VO command enter. And you just kind of repeat that process on each file. And then when you're done, you can still do your VO Shift M to get to, and then go down to compress. So it's a lot of, it feels like a fingerful or a handful, but once you do it, it's not too complicated.
So does that represent like a mouse click?
I don't know. That's just like what's called the voiceover selection.
I see.
I'm not sure. I wonder, because there are different commands for mouse click or for holding down the mouse. That's VO command shift space, but I'm not sure.
This is Cliff.
Yeah, Cliff.
One thing I would ask you, and I'm not sure because I don't do it very often, but don't you have to do Command C after you select those files so they don't go away per se before you zip them or not?
No.
Okay, because I don't zip very often, so I can't remember. And what voice is that you're using?
It's the Nikki Enhanced. Unfortunately, the bad thing with that voice is you can't adjust the rate on it. You can't adjust the volume. It's just, I think it's under one of the Siri voices actually, but
Yeah, but it's under but it's on Ventura though, right?
it's what? Yeah.
It's under the Ventura Mac OS.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I just know that when I'm selecting non-continuous items like that, which is what that method is called for anybody that has heard it a different way, I know I've made the mistake of not doing Command C to copy the stuff to the clipboard. And I have to go back and select that stuff all over again. One time it was like almost 40 of them, and I had to walk away to take a breath and come back to do it again.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, that's right. It's non-contiguous selection. I think I have that written somewhere. But yeah, very good.
This is Darcy.
Yes, Darcy.
So just to, I don't think, I mean, I don't think it's exactly the same as the mouse stuff. But that being said, I think the only way you can do it without voiceover is with the mouse. Like, because I don't think there's actually a way to do it with the keyboard without. So like a sighted person would use the mouse, but you're not. Like when you're doing that, when you're doing the non-contiguous selection with voiceover, you're not using the mouse. You're not manipulating the mouse pointer in any way, but you're essentially doing that. It's just a different way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, great. So, does anyone have any questions about anything on the Mac? An app you're trying to figure out, a voiceover thing that's not cooperating, Mac OS
This is
Ventura
Cliff.
bugs. Yeah, Cliff.
Sorry, I don't want to jump in. I know you and Herbie both use the Rocket app for the emojis.
Uh-huh.
Do you know if there's a contingent list somewhere that tells you what keys are what? Because I know the way to bring it up is colon, but you know you kind of have to play the guessing game to see what emoji is where. Do you know if there's a list somewhere that you can get to tell you what key is what emoji?
I just start typing the first few letters of the emoji I'm looking for, maybe, and then you can down arrow to view results. And otherwise, I think the website that you download it from, matthewpalmer.net, might have some sort of instructions.
Yeah, I don't know how I was able to do it, but I know if you do colon, whatever, that's shift semicolon. Yeah, colon.
Yeah.
When you do colon, you can just push one letter of any key on the keyboard and it'll say an emoji. So you don't technically have to search. I've actually never tried searching. Maybe I'll try it that way. But I know that when I did start to try to search with that app in that way, it was putting emojis in there because of that shortcut that brings up those emojis with, you know, that list or whatever. So I'll
Right.
try that. I'll try the search way and see if that even if that works.
All right.
This is Darcy.
Yes, Darcy.
I've not used that app, but what I'm guessing is going on, just based on what you're saying, is that it's probably when you hit that first letter, it probably is beginning a search, and that's just happens to be
Yeah.
the first match. Like, you know, you might hit an S, for example, and it might be like a smiley or something. That might be the first. I have no idea if that's even, you know, what it would be, but like that, you know, I suspect that's what's going on, is that you just
That's what I do, and then I just hit enter when it. So I
yeah,
might
when it hits the one you want, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I'll give that a shot then. I
Yeah,
actually
I don't
paid
use
a
that
little.
one, but I do use, because Launch Bar, which is an app I've talked about before, it can search emojis, so that's how I do it. But it's
Oh,
the
Yeah, I
same
have a friend. I have
idea.
a friend who swears by that launch bar. I've never been able to get into it, but he swears by it. A friend of mine that lives down there in Texas. But yeah, he swears he's been using launch bar for like ever, ever since the
Oh, I have
first version
two.
came out. He loves
I
it
have
too.
two, and
He will not do it any other way.
I
Well, we
was
may
worried
have.
because it didn't work at first when Ventura came out. And so for the couple weeks there, before they updated it, it felt like I was having to use my Mac with my hand tied behind my back, because I couldn't do everything the way I was used to doing it was not there. So
Yeah. That would be. Well, we may have to have some sort of a demo or why use Launch Bar, or what you like about Launch Bar type things sometimes. So, all
yeah,
right, great. Who would like to ask our next question?
This is Shri.
Yes, Shri.
So what constitutes when to use the enter versus using the VO spacebar?
Who would like to answer Shri?
this is Darcy.
I've been doing a lot of talking, but yeah, Darcy, go ahead.
I have two, and that's what I wasn't sure if I should. Well, a lot of times pressing enter you're going to trigger the default button. And sometimes whereas pressing VO space, or often you can just press the space bar by itself, depending on where you are, like if you're in a dialogue or something, will trigger the button that's currently focused. So a lot of times, you know, like the OK button might be the default button. So wherever you are in a dialogue, you can just hit enter and it will trigger it. Same with, like, a good example is in Zoom here. When you start recording, that got it button is the default button. So you can press enter and it will trigger the default button. So it's one of those things. It's good to kind of eventually once you get to know apps you're comfortable with and you know what the default buttons are, it's a good kind of time saver.
Definitely. And when in doubt, just use if you want to use VO Space. I mean, to me, I take the approach, I don't want to have to press any more keys than I have to, but sometimes you're either just, you
Yep.
want to be quick and it's just a habit, or you're not sure, so you just press it. So,
Yeah, it doesn't hurt it. Doesn't hurt
no,
anything. It's just
no,
that you just have to be careful that pressing enter might not trigger the thing you think you're triggering.
Right.
If it's an app. So you're probably safer to use VO Space, but
Yeah.
an app you're comfortable with, you could do it.
Yep. All right. Was I hearing somebody else comment or say anything, or?
This is Joe.
Yes, Joe.
So I have a question regarding system settings now.
Ah, yes.
So system settings now has more of like an iOS feel for settings.
Right.
Probably iPad OS over iOS. I mean, the iPhone, because of the scroll area and then the table. So there's like two separate areas. So my question is, there's a vertical scroll bar between the two. Can you increase that to 100% to get rid of that scroll area where it'll behave more like system preferences?
That's an excellent question. Would anyone like to answer?
Or behave more like maybe iPhone OS where everything's just overlaying the interaction when you interact?
I think not, but you've got me curious.
Yeah,
Let's
me
see what we
too.
can do here.
This is Brad.
Yes, Brad.
I think we'd be talking about a vertical splitter, not a scroll.
Vertical,
bar.
vertical splitter.
But
I meant,
you know,
yep.
I'm wondering, I haven't tried that. I've got Ventura on
Because
one
you can
machine.
do that in Mail to get rid
but
of
you're
the.
closing the
doesn't-
folder pane or whatever the folder
Okay.
is. But
It
which
doesn't
you
look
can
like
do
the
that also
splitter
with
is
the keyboard
movable.
command.
I'm just
But
trying
I
to
don't know.
interact with it. I don't think it's movable because it won't
No,
change.
I
It
don't think
keeps
it's
saying
movable, and I
30%
don't
no matter
think-
what I do. So
I was just about
I
to say
don't
the
think-
same
yeah,
thing.
I
All I'm
was
saying
gonna
is
say.
30%.
yeah, I don't think this one's movable.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to
It's
mess
just a
around with it.
splitter.
But I was just thinking about it because I was in it the other day and I just hadn't had a chance to go back in and really mess around.
Yeah,
Still
I
a
don't
good
think
question, though.
that is a good question. I hadn't even thought of it. I hadn't even thought of trying it, but it in this instance, it's not like some splitters you can move, some you can't, and this looks to be one you can't.
Okay.
I think VOJ might be our friend, if you really want to move quickly. I mean, I'm used to doing VO right arrow a few times, but if you want to jump past that splitter with one less key press, I would try VOJ.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting used to selecting something from the original table, and then I use VOJ to go over to the scroll area.
Yep.
But then once you interact, or once you select some, so you would go into the accessibility settings and you select voiceover, and then you go into those settings and you have to interact with that. Where I run into a little, I mean, I get myself out of it, but I haven't found like a smooth way to kind of transition back. I guess I don't know if there's a smooth way to. I can't seem to get myself back.
Oh, you want to get back to that table.
No. I usually wind up back in the table. I want to get back in.
Oh, okay.
The access. I'm trying to see if there's a way to get back into the scroll area after you interact with.
Oh, in the options to adjust for whatever you've
Yeah.
selected.
Mhm.
Yeah, inside
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
This is Cliff.
Yes, Cliff.
An easier way to find settings, especially the ones that are in that vertical scroll area, is instead of using that table to go up and down, stop interacting and jump or VO to that scroll area, is just to go to the view menu, and all the options or settings are in alphabetical order, even some of those that are in the sub menus of the scroll area.
Does the view menu show more settings than, because what I do sometimes if I'm
Yeah,
in a
it does.
hurry is I
Yep, it
do
shows.
VOD, I go to my dock and then VO Shift M on system settings. So,
It may show it there too, but if you're already in system settings, it will show you everything in alphabetical order, even
okay.
stuff that's buried in other menus.
Yes, yes, this is Brad. Yes, it does. That's how I used to always access system preferences. So it is a bit of a learning experience, but yes, I have found, it's laid out differently. But yes, that's kind of my go-to way of accessing things. And
Yeah.
like Cliff said, it's nice alphabetic order. You could type the first letter or 2 letters of what you're looking for and find it real quick.
I do it from the dock, the context menu, but yeah, if you're
That's what
already
I,
in
well, that's
system
what I
preference,
do.
Yep.
if you're already in there, it makes more sense to do the view. I'll have
Yeah.
to try to remember that.
You can do the view, or you can go to the dock and do the
Yeah.
dock icon with shortcut menu. Do either way works, no matter what.
Okay.
So
This is Darcy.
are we
Oh,
Oh, yeah. So, Joe was going to talk, and I think
Yep.
because it's, yeah, go ahead.
yep, no problem.
So we're talking about going into the view menu to access not only the categories that are in the table, but the subcategories within those categories.
This is
Yes.
Brad, correct.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Brad. Sorry.
That's it. Yeah, correct. That's what he was.
Okay.
And you can do it by either going to, when you're in system settings, see, almost said preferences.
I know.
When you're in system settings or system preferences, if you're in the older version of the OS, when you can either go to the view menu or you can go to the dock, which is how I get to things when I don't have system settings or preferences open. I go to the dock, open the shortcut menu, and use first 2-letter navigation and jump to what I want. And then I use that arrow key or the VO space bar, Sheree. So there you go.
And Darcy, I think, was saying something.
Well, I had kind of a follow-up question. Because I'm curious if anyone else has noticed this. The first couple of days when Ventura, I was really having trouble with because everything was not where I was used to finding it, right? And I was using the search and it was working great. I would hit search and I could find, and even things that were several levels deep, it would find it. It would find all the hits. But eventually it just stopped working and it hasn't been working since then. Have you guys? It just doesn't work. And I don't know what happened. It just, no matter what, it just takes you back to you can type anything you want and it just takes you back to the table and nothing changes. Is anyone else having the search? Like, I don't know if something's gone wrong on my thing or if it's just, but it was just weird because it was working perfectly and it just stopped, which is really frustrating because.
This is Brad.
Yes, Brad.
Could it have been that it changed with the update to 13.0.1?
I think it stopped before that. It stopped before that. It was,
I don't know.
Like I said, it was working and then it stopped. So I'm gonna have to actually try. The thing I usually try that I haven't yet is logging in as a guest, and because then you're going from a blank slate.
Yeah.
But because it's just weird because it's still kind of a trick sometimes to find things because they've really juggled things around, and we were talking before, I think, about how if you wanted to what was it? If you wanted voiceover, you had to go to lock screen to deal with the login stuff.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Yeah,
yes.
and it's just everything's in a different spot, and so the search was good for that, but my search just stopped working, so it's just really frustrating. And if there is something corrupted, like a preference thing or something, I have no idea even where to find it, right?
Yeah. Yes, Cliff?
No, I was just gonna mention that I was trying it while you were talking, and I'm having no issues finding anything. So I don't know.
Well, don't hold your breath. It sounds like from what Darcy's saying.
Right.
Well, I hope it's just a glitch on my part.
Big on search. I'm about to say I'm not real big on searching anyway. I usually know where everything is, so I just go to it. But
I do too.
I'm not one of those people who use Spotlight either. So don't ask me about that either. So
well, I'm not really there. It's because before I mean, I've been using it for so long. I knew where everything was, right, in system preferences, but
Mhm.
in system settings, things, for the most part, are where you'd expect to find them. But there are a few things that are not where you'd expect to find them. So sometimes it's a trick to find it, especially without the search. So
And I just want to, I mean, I know we're kind of exploring different angles of, well, first of all, I want to see if anybody has any questions, and then
yeah.
I do have another thought on or question on the system settings thing. But does anyone have any questions? Because we're here for you and we want to be able to help, even though we're still figuring out the bugs and the new things in Ventura ourselves. So,
This is Joe again. Just
yes, Joe?
they move the login out of users and groups. Where did they move that? Like all the to set like voiceover.
This is Darcy.
Yes, Darcy.
It's under lock screen, I believe.
Okay.
Which is not where you'd expect it but it kind of makes it, if they're trying to have a parallel with iOS and stuff, you kind of see stuff like that in lock screen there, but usually I've never really thought of the Mac login stuff as the lock screen. So it wasn't where I would expect it to find it, but yeah, that's where you want to go to turn on things like have voiceover talk at login and all that.
Okay.
Right. Well, before we abandon this topic of system preferences completely, some of us the other day, I don't remember which club or where, but we're talking about the possibility, since so many things are in the view menu, could we create a keyboard shortcut to launch them? And I was trying to do that for the startup disk preferences because every now and then I do tend to switch to my boot camp. And I was having no luck. You're supposed to go into the keyboard preferences and you can go to, it's a little bit different now in system settings, but I was putting in the menu option exactly as it was written, startup disk and creating a shortcut. And half the battle, of course, is finding a shortcut that's not already used somewhere. But I was not having too much luck with that because that would be great if you go to something often, or same as, wouldn't it be great to be able to have a shortcut, and I don't think this would work, but to get directly to your output settings and sound. Right now you can do V or not VO. I'm still trying to remember the command. No, option F function F11 to bring up your sound. But then and there you still have to find the input or the output heading. So it'd be really cool to have a shortcut to even, get to something like that directly. But I did not have success even creating a shortcut for something in the view menu, and maybe I should try with another option, but still playing with that, and we'll report back on if I can have any success with that some other time. So I don't know if anyone else has tried or remembers that conversation. May have been on the Mac Buzz or something last week, but all right.
This is
Well,
Shri.
yes, Shri.
So regarding the thing you just mentioned about the sound, you said function option F11?
Yeah.
Function. Now, I did it where I went to the menu extras and went to sound, and it's got a list of all my outputs.
Oh,
Is that
you
doing the
can do
same
that
thing?
too. I think so. I think, but it ultimately still takes you to system preferences, or if you want to adjust your input, you still have to go to system preferences. I I'm not sure. I tend to forget about that option there. Does anyone else know?
This is Brad. Repeat the question.
So Chanelle mentioned that you can press option F11 to bring up the sound.
Uh-huh.
I have it set up in the menu extras. When I go to sounds, I just do VO spacebar. It brings up all my inputs.
Correct. That's
No.
different. This actually
Okay.
opens, it takes you directly to sounds in, well, system preferences, or I guess now in Ventura it would be system settings. I just did it, and I'm still running Monterey on this MacBook Pro. I need to upgrade, but I've got something going on that means I need to stick with this for a little bit. But yeah,
So
it's a thing that's going to, like we talked about. I don't know if I'm not on Ventura here, but this is Monterey, and it's the thing it's going to system preferences and choosing sounds. That's what it does. It's a shortcut to sounds. Now you could do what you did, go to menu extras, or now as it's called, system menu, find sounds, VO spacebar on the icon, and go to the bottom of the list using VO and end, or VO FN right arrow will take you to the end, and it says sound preferences and VO spacebar on that, and it'll do the same thing. It's just, different way to skin that cat.
right, thank you.
All right. Yeah, I just went there and mine in systems, going in menu extras, it only shows my outputs. So if I need to change my input, then I would still have to do the other method. But there we
This is
go.
Sri. How are you getting
What?
how are you getting the outputs? I'm sorry. How are you getting the output? Because I only see my inputs.
Oh, weird. Mine says output. Yeah, because when I do VO, I do the menu extras, and then it says 25% sound status menu. I VO space, and then so this is the sound volume slider, and then it says heading output, and it shows me
Interesting.
all the output things I have. And then there's a sound settings button at the end, which would probably take me into system settings.
Interesting.
Yep.
I have that on my status bar even. I can't remember how I turned that off or where you turn it back on. I was gonna
You
check and I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, in the menu in control center settings.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I'm sure that's
yeah.
where it is now. You're right.
Yep.
I usually don't keep a lot of stuff. I always took it off there because I usually get to it from the shortcut. So, but if you can get
Oh,
to
you have a
the
shortcut.
well, I mean, like this thing you were just talking about, the
Right.
option
Okay.
volume buttons thing.
Okay.
I usually don't keep a lot of extra like I turn off all the built-in stuff that I don't need because I have so many like third-party things that are up in the status menu that I don't,
Right. That makes
This is Cliff.
sense. Yeah, Cliff.
Chanelle, were you saying that when you went to sound, you're only finding your output? Because when I
When I
go
go
on, I
to
find
when I go into the menu extras, the way Shri was talking
the
about.
extras. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're not going in the system settings and finding it and then going down there because there
Well,
was an
normally
issue.
that's what I do, but I wanted to see what Shri was talking about, so I just looked at the the menu extras now.
Okay, yeah, that's one of those things that I said and forget and never have to do. But I do know that some people were saying when Ventura first came out that they weren't able to select or change, like if they had AirPods, they wouldn't be able to switch to them because it would always kick them out of the table or whatever. So they had some trouble
Oh.
selecting that source. I never had that issue, but I did hear on Twitter that some people were having that issue. So
Yeah, that confirm button. So when I went to go change sound sources, or only to realize today I didn't have my the adapter plugged in, so I could use my headphones. That was the problem. When I do want to go change a sound source, getting that confirm button to work is a little bit tricky. Some people have luck with just tabbing to it and then space. That sometimes works. The other day or today, I had to do VO Command F5, and then I was able to do VO space. So the confirm button is still a little bit iffy. All right. So does anyone have a question on anything besides system setting? Ugh, I keep thinking system preferences, system settings. I mean, that's a pretty important aspect of the Mac, but if there are any other questions, we would be happy to have them.
This is Darcy.
What?
I said this is Darcy, but
Yes, Darcy.
Okay, well, not a question, but I want to talk about that thing I was telling you about earlier.
Sure.
If this is, yeah. Okay, so I found, well, I heard about it on a podcast, an utility that I think could be really useful for a lot of people, and it's called Velja, Velja, which apparently is a Norwegian word for meaning change. And what it is it's free. You can get it in the App Store. And when you run it for the first time, it wants to become your default web browser. And you do that. But it's not actually a web browser. What it is it's, I think he describes it as a browser picker. So what you can set up different rules so that if you click on a link from like an email or a message or something, you can decide where that link would open. So for example, maybe you use Google Docs and you find that works better in Chrome. You could have all Google Docs links open in Chrome. What I use it for, and what actually kind of speeds things up a little bit, is one of the things that is actually set by default is if you click on a Zoom link from an email, it can open directly in Zoom without having to first go to Safari. So, and when you go to Safari, you have to hit that allow button. You don't have to do that because it opens right up in Zoom. And it's pretty neat. Like I said, it's a free little utility that you can get. And if you find yourself, needing multiple browsers for different things, or even like I said, this Zoom thing, it might be worth looking at. And it runs in the menu bar. That's why I was talking about how I have all these extra like third-party things. When you first set it up, you can tell it to start at login. So it will bring up one of those notifications that we have in Ventura now that there's like new login items. But once you've dismissed that, then it just stays up there, and you kind of don't really have to worry about it. It just will redirect your browsing to whatever you want it to do. So it's kind of useful.
That sounds like a great app. And where do you get it from the Mac App Store or from a
Yep,
website?
you get it from the Mac apps. You can get it from the website of the developer. I Googled it, and I think the first hit was the Mac App Store, and the second one was the page of the developer. But you can just get it from the App Store. I assume if you search for that in the App Store, that'll be probably the only one you'll find, and that's how you get it.
Great.
And like I said, it's free, so it's worth checking out. Like I said, it's free, so you don't really have anything to lose.
Definitely. Yes, Brad, go ahead.
Could Darcy repeat the name and spell it?
It's called Velja. I guess it's a Norwegian word. That's Velja.
Okay, cool.
Velja.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's super useful. Like, I think all of us here, I mean, we're probably, a lot of us are using Zoom on our Mac. So even just to not have to hit that allow button in Safari all the time. And then you're also, the other advantage would be, since you're not going through Safari, you're probably not getting those Zoom downloads all the time. I'm sure we all have those installed PKG things in our downloads folder. So it's worth it just for that alone,
Definitely. That sounds like a great app. I will use it, and by next Mac and Talk, I'll be able to, to talk about it. Sounds good. Does anyone else have an app that they've been, if you've been playing with, or just really neat, or a new Mac app you're using, or maybe one that's just you couldn't live without, even if you have been using it for a while?
Yeah, system settings.
Yeah. You definitely. I know. I'd probably go in there. I don't know how many. Well, actually, yes. Some of us were talking about Loopback earlier. Oh my goodness. I definitely Loopback and Club Deck, and Zoom. Those would probably be my most used Mac apps right now.
I love Loopback. Sorry, this is Cliff, but yeah, I love that app. It's a little spendy, but it does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's great. I still I'm still trying to understand if you set this input, then that has to do that, and I'm still trying to understand the complexities of audio. But it is the coolest little. It avoids needing to basically have a physical mixer, and so you're able to do um, connecting two different whatever things together, like Zoom and Clubhouse, and
Yeah.
whatever else people do with Loopback. Yeah, somebody.
It's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
There you go.
This is Shri.
Yes, Shri.
Now, regarding the loopback, from a speed perspective, and just general running it, is it easier than having the physical mixer where you have all the knobs in front of you?
Says Brad.
Yes, Brad.
I'm still learning it, but I don't know that you could really compare it to a physical mixer. Maybe you
Oh,
could.
you can't. I don't.
But
Okay.
it's a digital mixer, but it's not like you got a thing sitting there with knobs you can just reach over and just adjust. I mean, you can adjust levels and volumes. It's different, but you basically just create virtual devices.
Yeah, it's not. It's
The
kind
reason
of
I'm
really
asking this
novel.
question, is I did it once and I lost audio and I could not recover to see which I turned on to the audio. And I was on dark then because I had no voiceover, no nothing. Because I selected some input that I shouldn't have selected.
This is Cliff.
Yeah, Cliff.
That usually happens when you select voiceover because it automatically mutes everything that you select and you have to go in and undo it. I think to avoid that, instead of selecting the voiceover, you pick TTS. And Brad can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what you pick because that also will give you voiceover speech, but it doesn't mute it. I mean, it mutes it, but it allows you to still go in there and change it without taking the speech away, if that makes sense.
Kind of lost you there. So
Interesting.
I have no audio. Did something in loopback. What is it that I'm supposed to do?
Brad, I don't recall seeing TTS on the list. I saw voiceover, but it does call it a different name. And to be honest,
Oh yeah, it's a
I
little
just
string of
added it
numbers
to
and
one of my
letters. Yeah.
virtual. I can't remember what it called it, but it doesn't call it voiceover after you add it. But when you pick it from your, a new input source list, it says voiceover there. But when you add it, it's got a different name. But and I haven't messed with it that much. I just added it last night, and so it's there for me to come back and utilize. But yes, you do have to. There is a button you turn on or off to. Do you want to hear it or don't want to hear it? And right now I've got it set to be off because I only want to turn it on if I'm going to use a demo when using my primary virtual device, which is actually in my other virtual devices. It's the one that's got it's a long story, but I'm learning it. That's all I can say.
Mine, I was just looking, says something like Calm Apple speech for
That's it.
something.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So where's this setting at?
When you go into, so when you, let's say you create a new session and then within that session, there's something you can do, add a new device or add a new source, or is that
And
the
a
same?
a new input source, I think is what it is.
Yeah. Oh my
And
goodness.
there's a list of
We're
all
still
kinds
learning.
of things.
We're still
Yeah,
learning.
we're still learning it. And I had to get my teacher to go through something with me last night just to make sure. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I don't want to take the training wheels off yet.
Yeah, me too.
So
Well,
this will work even if it's silent. Like I'm just trying to figure out how I could recover when I couldn't hear anything.
I wouldn't change your default input or even change voiceover at all unless you have specific reason to.
yeah.
Like
No,
I haven't in now granted I've only just been playing with loopback for the last couple of months, but the stuff I've been doing with it, I haven't had to even mess with voiceover. I haven't had to change the default outputs or anything. So voiceover never gets touched. Now, if you're doing what Brad was suggesting, where you're, recording demos or you're streaming demos, which is or like doing demos over Zoom or something, which is what I assume you're doing. Yeah. Then yeah, you could use voiceover. But I mean, I tend to, if I'm going to be recording a demo, I would probably be using Audio Hijack instead. But yeah, I think you can just don't even, while you're getting used to loopback, don't even do anything. Like, don't change your default outputs or anything.
Yeah, don't. Just make sure your voiceover is set. Before you even get into loopback, make sure your voiceover is set to whatever you want it to come out of. I think that's what Herbie says. Make sure your voiceover output is set, and then there's no need to even add voiceover into
add it to a session yet.
Yeah, unless you're going to do a demo or something.
Well, I know what I did was I went to the menu extras and it has my loopback options, like all the input sessions, and I selected something that I shouldn't have selected, to where I got no audio output.
Mm.
And then
I wanted to say something.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Cliff.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that loop or Audio Hijack is my go-to also, and also with most stuff, it's like Zoom and even Club Deck, you can just automatically bring voiceover in there anywhere, so you really don't have to fiddle with voiceover and loop back, except if it's a microphone or a headset or whatever. So
is it loopback appliance in Texas? I think so. No.
It really just depends, and the thing too about something like loopback, it may not be the kind of thing that everyone even needs, right? Like,
right.
It's I mean, I think that's why it's so expensive, is because it's one of those things that if most people don't need it, but if you do need it, it's a really handy thing to have. But like, unless you're doing kind of more advanced stuff with these, Zoom demos and streaming and that kind of stuff, it might not even be something that everyone needs, right? Like, it's a very specific tool. Like,
it is. Yep.
Yeah. This is like I play a lot of audio files and things, and it means that when I'm on Zoom, I don't have to screen share, and I don't have to worry about people hearing my voiceover because I'm not even screen sharing. Now I'm teaching a class in another universe, and when I am teaching Mac and using voiceover, I want people to hear, so I just do screen share, and it's simple.
Yeah.
Either full screen share because I got sighted people who get upset when they can't see what I'm doing, or I just share computer audio when I don't have to worry about that.
This is Sandhya.
Yes, Sandhya.
So yes, I'm like a baby when this loopback thing, like literally like 1 day ago. So I haven't done anything. We're just setting it up. But I also bought the P4, whatever that's called, the Zoom track mixer. So I mean, I get it. I see that they're both totally different. One is digital, one is more physical. Have y'all used both? Can anybody provide perspective as to using both of them? And I guess it always depends on what you're doing, right?
I was gonna say, what's your end goal? What do you?
What's the end goal? I mean, basically what we do in iBUG, sharing music, sharing demos, all that kind of stuff. That's basically what we do. I mean, I'm not doing anything else.
Yeah.
So
this is Brad. I'd say in one hand, they do the same thing, but they do it differently. And on another hand, they do different tasks.
Okay. Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah.
They're the same, but they're different.
This is true from a person who's learning this. I'm just trying to picture in my mind right now. I see it's kind of like asking a person who does audio setup, say, hey, is wireless better than wired? He's going to tell you wired is better.
Right.
So I'm wondering the same thing. If you talk to someone who does this as who may do it professionally, they would say, okay, software is never going to be good as hardware.
Actually, though, I can speak from the experience. I don't understand all this audio stuff, but what I do see is when the only real experience I can draw from when people use the P4 to connect Zoom and Clubhouse. They basically can't use either their phone or their computer for some reason because we would hear their speech. They can only connect. Whereas when I connect using the software on my Mac, one, people get the spatial audio. So even on Zoom, they can hear in Clubhouse if somebody's on my right hand side. Two, I can moderate in Clubhouse or I can host in Zoom. I could try to do both, although that would be asking a lot. I could share audio or use like what Brad was saying, have audio come through in the loopback session and have it heard in both places. A person using hardware, I don't think could do that as easily. And this is just for me, understanding audio is like understanding orientation and mobility. It doesn't. There's a lot I don't get, but I'm just talking about my observation, what I know from what I've seen. And yeah, go ahead, Darcy.
I was just gonna say it really depends on what you want to do. Like what Chanelle was just describing. I also think it's better to do it in software. But then on the other hand, I know sometimes you might be in a situation where you have more than one person in a room and you need multiple microphones. Then obviously you're gonna want some sort of hardware solution. And I think that the P4 can do that. I think it has more than one input. But I just, for me, I like software better if nothing else, chances are the software is going to be more accessible because there's no screens that don't talk. So and I do like the fact that I can, whatever I'm doing, people aren't hearing voiceover and they're not hearing. And even I have done things before where I've used the QuickTime thing where you plug your phone or your iPad into your Mac and you can get its audio through QuickTime. That can also work. There's lots of different ways to do it. And I think the real, before you kind of ask, what should I get? What hardware should I get? What software should I get? You got to ask yourself, like, what do you want? What do you want to accomplish? What's your goal? What do you want at the end of the day? What do you want to produce? And once you kind of answer those questions, like what the tasks you want to do, then you can kind of figure out what the best either software or hardware solution is. And it's hard because it's hard to know even where to begin. And all these apps like Loopback and Audio Hijack, for example, are both very complicated, but they're both very powerful. And the learning curve is steep. But once you get over, like once you start learning, then you can do all kinds of really amazing things if that's what you want to do. So they're not easy questions to answer for people, as far as like what the best solution is. Just really what your end goal is.
Yeah,
this is true.
Yeah, Shri, go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe someone who's new coming to this, we always like to touch and feel something. When we turn a knob, we know we're manually controlling it. When we don't have that, we're relying on something, like you said, Darcy. It's a learned thing. You'd have to spend some time to educate yourself. You don't have to educate yourself to turn a knob left or right because you kind of know it, right?
Right, but you have to know what it's going to happen when you turn those knobs and how are you wiring everything in so those knobs do the things you expect they're going to do when you turn them. So it's still the same. It's still a learning curve. It's just a different different tools, but you're still probably accomplishing the same thing more or less. It's just and everyone has their preferences and their biases and all that. So it just depends. It's hard to not be able to give people like definitive answers, but everyone, because I'm sure the way I do stuff with Audio Hijack and stuff like that and Loopback is probably different than how Chanelle, Herbie, and Brad are probably we're all doing stuff slightly different, but we all do things that work for us.
Yep.
So
yeah,
Sandhya.
I was gonna like respond to Sri's comment about the knobs and like, I mean, for example, I know nothing about mixers. All I have is this little baby mixer that I bought, that P4 thing. And even for, I think it's like 5x5 or something, pretty small, or 6x6. It's like a little square, but oh my goodness, that thing is surrounded by ports and buttons and, all kinds of, stuff. So just getting familiar with that also. I mean, it can be done like y'all said. So anyway, that's the other side of it. So because I've there's audio tutorials on it, and I've just listened to them multiple times, and I still feel really overwhelmed. But that's enough. That's all I had to say.
This is free. Can I ask Sonia a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So Sonia, obviously you have you have loopback, and then you bought this hardware. What made you pick these two opposite ends then?
Oh, peer pressure. Brad and Herbie were doing it, so I needed to do it too.
This is Chanelle. I think that your P4 might be useful. Like, apparently Herbie says it's if you want to have the phone, if you want your phone to be able to be the voice of your phone, voiceover to be transferred over Zoom, or I know
This
at
is Herbie.
convention, just as some people were using their P4 to project or do something so we could hear, like there was a hospitality room, and so somebody had their P4 connected so I could hear us and we could hear them, and I don't know. Go ahead, Herbie.
So when thinking about hardware, the one real advantage to the P4 and the Vocaster is these are tiny mixers, and one reason why I never wanted to get a mixer myself in the past is because I did not want this big bulky machine with knobs and stuff. And so if you want a hardware mixer, the P4 might be a good basic mixer depending on what you're wanting to do. And yeah, they can do different things. So what Chanel's referring to with the iPhone is like you can use QuickTime for transmitting the iPhone voiceover and whatever, but there's some things that it just will not transmit, like a Clubhouse or a phone call, music, and so that can affect how you demo something. And so using a mixer instead of, it treats the mixer will be like plugging in your phone to a regular headphone jack.
We were just trying to ascertain why hardware versus software, and I think the answer, the bottom line or consensus was the answer is different for everyone, but
it is. But I think sometimes if people know I think you need to know what you want to accomplish. I think most people would find that 99% of what they want to do actually can be done with software solutions, but
yeah, that's kind of what we were.
This is
Darcy. Yeah, go ahead.
One quick thing to do. One nice advantage too with the software solution is you can try it first before you paid anything. Like the Rogue Amoeba stuff. Their demo stuff is pretty cool because basically what it does is just after a few minutes it starts to introduce like some static, but it's enough that you could tell if the thing's going to work for you before you. But where with any physical stuff you have to actually pay for it. But one thing I will say that's really odd. And I think, you're talking about how you can't record like your phone and Clubhouse and stuff like that, or on with the QuickTime thing. But strangely enough, if you plug an iPad in, you can. You can record like Siri. You can record, and I think my guess is that must be something Apple did by design, so that you can't like intentionally record phone calls. Because there's lots of places where it's not legal to record phone calls. So I suspect that's why they've done that. Like it's probably not. There's probably no physical reason why you wouldn't work. But
then on Apple though, you could still have the FaceTime option. So. Yeah. So wouldn't it be just as it?
You would think, but that's just my guess as to why all that kind of stuff you can record on the iPad, but you can't on the.
Now that being said, with Loopback, you don't even need if you're recording phone calls, you can just put FaceTime into Loopback. You don't even need to worry about using your iPhone into QuickTime at all.
Oh yeah, and you can do that even with audio hijack, even without.
Yeah,
you've got.
Yeah, one other advantage though with software that I did want to mention, it's a whole lot easier to take with you because you can just take your computer, a power supply, and USB headphones to, like, say, go down to your Starbucks, and you can hook up your, literally set your mixer right there on your computer, provided the Wi-Fi works. And
But that P4 is pretty small, though, isn't it?
it is, but it's still an extra thing to carry around
Yeah.
and keep track of and have on your table that.
But I guess I kind of feel like, Sonia, so what if somebody was a total beginner, what would you have them learn first? Would you have them learn hardware first or software first?
Well, me personally, I'd have them learn software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is true. Does the P4 support XLR?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, it has 4 XLR ports on it.
I was going to say that's an advantage to software, and I think we mentioned this earlier, that like if you're in a situation where you have multiple microphones that you need multiple microphone inputs, then yeah, you want something like that for sure. They would just be overly complicated but it just really depends on what you want.
The one area where I would definitely probably encourage more hardware than software use, let's say if you're wanting to set up music recording, that goes into a whole nother realm, and depending on what you're doing, that is where you might need more hardware than software. And again, even that depends on what you're doing, because if there's a lot you can do now with GarageBand and all that, but but if you need something, but I would teach people the software way, and it's a lot cheaper and can do most of the exact same things. So I also vote for software over hardware.
Sonia.
Yes, Sandhya.
Can I pick your brain? I mean, if we've, spent too much, that's fine. Otherwise, I just have a quick question. It's not really a quick question. Maybe we could talk about it later, but eventually we want to have like hybrid meetings, and I'm trying to figure out how, Chanelle and Herbie both know how we used to do real meetings, and I personally don't see how how is that going to happen in the new reality where we have people, lots of people online and people in a room and, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I know there's hardware out there, fancy microphones and all that kind of stuff. Is that the route, or is there a software route, or do we have to put people in different rooms?
This is
physically?
Herbie.
Yeah, go ahead, Herbie.
This is where I'd probably be using more of the Mac and hardware, because you're going to need a setup that your people in the room can be mic'd up who are doing the demonstrations, and you also need Zoom to be able to come out of a speaker. And depending on how professional you want it to sound, I think that's where I would have I probably would be more inclined to use a well, I guess it depends on the environment. Are we, like for a place like the iBUG Cafe, I think even then you could still do software, because you could technically have your AT microphone. I guess it really depends on whether you're talking about piping people's voice around the room, or just how we used to do it, where people be seated around the cafe, and that
to recreate, like now we have this really clean, we've all gotten used to a nice clean Zoom interface, everybody's even, but when you have some people here and some people there.
So this is Herbie.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be brutally honest and say stick with Zoom meetings. I think that would be your most equal level playing field.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought, but
I'm just going to say it out. It's not that it can't be done, but it's going to be the most equal way. And especially, since we have a lot more people spread out now that are on this, that are going to, I don't know. I mean, because you always have the issue of like restaurant noises and tables and microphones and computers. And you're also going to need some kind of, hardware to connect the phone to the mobile network if the Wi-Fi isn't going to cooperate in the restaurant.
I don't miss those days.
I know, me either, but okay. I didn't mean take up too much time. But thank you guys. I knew y'all would have an answer.
This is Darcy.
Yes,
I think there's
and
always going to be a disconnect between, like, you're never going to get it. It's never going to be perfect because the
No.
Zoom people and the live people are always going to be separate because you
Mhm.
can't. It's never going to
Yeah.
sound great on either side of things.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and obviously, I'm assuming that. I mean, I didn't really know you guys then, but I assume back then, you guys were mostly just people who lived around there, right? But now you got people.
Mhm,
Like,
got
they
people
all over
use
the place.
this free conference call thing that
Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to get down to Texas every week.
Yeah. This is Herbie. I mean, it used to be, I mean, it did work with free conference
did.
call, but what would happen is you'd have a handful of people actually on the call, like maybe 4 or 5. And the majority of us were in the actual room. So it's like, we were a live event and we were able to include the virtual people. I'm afraid what we'd have now is a lot more of a mixture where it wouldn't be
Yeah.
just live
I
people and a
wonder-
handful of people on.
So, not to say, but I wonder if some of the agencies or the blindness organizations have both had experience doing hybrid type conventions. I wonder I don't know what they do and how they,
But they're set up. This is Herbie.
yeah, Herbie.
This is where I'm saying too, where it gets interesting because a lot of their setup is for like your ballrooms where you've got
Oh, okay.
things piped into the mixer. It's not. I'm not saying
Okay.
it's not doable. I'm just saying for an even sound, it's still going to be the best way is for this way. But otherwise,
Well, I've always preferred virtual, but have to give everybody a shot. And I think
Yeah.
Shri was trying to talk earlier, so I could be wrong.
2 things. First, the P4. Do you know how much it cost?
This is Sonia. It's
Yeah,
about
Sandhya.
$200. I found
Okay.
like a bundle and it has like all
Yeah.
this stuff. I can send you the bundle.
I bought,
Right.
this is Brad, I bought just the P4 by itself, and I want to say it was under $250 for just the P4.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what I
Now-
paid now. It's been a while. Get on Amazon.
This
Go look. Search Amazon.
this cafe made me think about it a little bit here because if you were in I'm going to assume, I'm making some assumptions here. The people in the Houston area who would attend the cafe would be relatively small. I'm guessing. I'm just guessing here. But if you were in a room, let's say you're in a library conference room where it's not very big, couldn't you, because it's just 2 parties, right? It's one in a room and then everybody else is on Zoom. So if the room had, let's say this P4, it sounds like there's multiple mics. If you spread out the mic and you had one, external speaker, wouldn't it not work?
this is Herbie.
Yeah, Herbie.
First of all, I mean that would mean actually having to use an actual library conference room. In the past, we actually, I don't know if you heard our older iBUG cafes or not, Shri, but we were in an actual restaurant that had a back room that really did not have a closed door, or even if it did, you always had people coming in and out with food service. So a library conference room would be a little bit more ideal for a virtual meeting. And again, you could place the computer, the Mac on the table, have the speaker out loud, and have 1 or 2 microphones, either one microphone for Michael or Sandhya. Well, actually, though, for that matter, if the cafe is still being run the same way with you running it, Shri, from your end, then I guess only the person. But then that goes into another issue: was the person doing the demo in the room, or actually are they all the way, like for instance, in Virginia or Canada? So that could affect
And
the
I
setup
think
too.
I want to make sure we have plenty of. We have not
Right.
had too many
Yeah.
Mac questions, but
yeah. Let's go back to
let's
that
see
question.
if we can.
The short answer
Yeah.
is yes, it can be done. It's just how even is it going to sound?
Thank you. And
How
sorry,
much money
Chanelle.
do you
Thank
want to
you.
put into
No,
it?
it's we've had so anyone we have about 15 or more minutes, few more minutes. So if you have a Mac question, we would love to hear from you. And it can be, just how to turn it on. It can be how do you make voiceover do such and such. We've been talking grand scheme, we've been talking system settings, but if whatever, we are here. There's no dumb question except the one that isn't asked. So anything you want to know about.
This is Dan.
Yeah, Dan, welcome.
Okay, let's get back to the issue of sound. One thing that I like about the iPhone, and I'm going to get back to Mac. One thing I like about the iPhone is that when you download something, the iPhone will give you a percentage reading, so you know for sure that you're downloading something. What I've found on the Mac is that when I download a file, it doesn't tell me that it's actually downloading. Is there any way to do that on the Mac to sort of the equivalent of what you're doing on the iPhone with the Mac? It's really nice to get a percentage reading when you're downloading. And I want to do that on the Mac. Is there a way to do that?
Okay, who would like to help Dan?
This is Brad.
Yes, Brad.
It depends on what you're downloading. Sometimes I do get a little dialogue that pops up and tells me the progress of the download. Other times I don't. It just does it. And therefore I don't get I'm not getting that progress, that dialogue with the progress bar. So,
This
and
is
I don't know
Darcy.
how to force it to do one or the other. Maybe
Yeah, Darcy, go ahead.
Okay, so if you're downloading a large file, like in Safari, for example, and you can have it, I have it tell me when download is started and it makes a sound when download's complete. But there is a thing that pops up in the toolbar that says downloads, and if you tap on that, it'll open up the little, like, is that? Oh yeah.
Yep.
I always forget about that.
Well, that's
okay.
the downloads folder.
No,
Yeah,
it also
yeah,
brings
that's
up downloads in Safari.
In
In
Safari.
Safari. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
And sometimes that, because I have it set, because you can set the downloads thing to go in different ways. I have it set to remove something from downloads from that downloads manager thing once it's been downloaded. So that may not always be there. But when you bring it up, there's a table and you can interact with it and you can see a progress, and it can read the progress to you, or it can make that little ticking noise that it makes, the little progress ticking noise. So you can get to it from there. But sometimes, unless you're downloading something really big, a lot of times I'll hear like download started, and the little chirp noise it makes when the download's complete, and then it's not there anymore. So unless you're downloading like a really, really large file, you may not even know.
Right.
Yeah, this is Brad.
Yeah, Brad.
I've also found that if I open my downloads folder, there is an item in there, and of course it says it's a Safari download, something like that. Anyway, when my focus is on it, it will tell me the percentage. Now, of course, I think I've got mine set is not to constantly repeat it, or else it never finishes what it's saying before it updates, so I never get a chance to hear it. So if I just down arrow away from it, then up arrow back to it, I can monitor its progress that way. And that's similar to what he's talking about opening your downloads within the browser.
And I think you can also fix how VoiceOver actually indicates progress.
Correct.
So if you go into your, the quickest way is to do VoiceOver verbosity with VOV. And if you go, let's see, when status changes.
Yep.
So you can have it play tone or tell you. If you go into your VoiceOver utility and then into the verbosity category there, and then into what is it? Announcements. Yeah, announcements. You can also control some of the progress, how it indicates progress there. So those
This
are a
is
couple
Brad.
things.
What I find when I had that done is if it's telling you like a number 46 before it finishes, before it actually finishes saying what it's saying, it updates and it says something else, and it never finishes what it's saying. So it's almost like a problem. So that's when I told mine not to update, and then I would just I know, okay, 46%. Okay. And then I can arrow away from it and then arrow back, and then it'll update itself when I come back to it.
Yeah.
But if it's downloading fast, you're never going to hear what it says because it's saying it so fast.
No.
And when you're getting a Mac update or any sort of software update, it'll actually make a little ticking in the background as it's going. So.
Okay, so you have to get into bring up the utilities, and bring up Verbosity rather, and find the sound preferences and click on
Verbosity.
Yeah.
It's
okay.
Verbosity and then announcements.
Okay, and that should enable some sort of sound when you're downloading, right?
Or well, you can set it to speech or beat play tone or nothing. Yeah.
Okay, I'll see what I can do with that.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think Darcy you were trying to say something.
No, I was just agreeing. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. All right. Excellent question. All right. Does anyone else have a question?
This is Sonia, but I don't want to manipulate. I mean,
No,
not
go
monopolize.
ahead, Sonia.
Not monopolize.
Well, it's okay. You have it now, so let's
Wrong
hear
choice. Okay. Okay. If you're in either Excel or Pages, how do I get to the top of not Pages? Well, you know,
numbers.
Numbers. Yes. How do I get to the top of a column? You know, like your just how do I get to the top, like the heading? Because I tried different things and I end up adding rows.
Command up arrow, isn't it?
Huh?
Command up arrow, I think.
Command up arrow?
Or option up arrow.
This is Herbie.
Yeah, Herbie.
I think it's command.
Indefinitely in numbers, at least it's command up arrow. Option up arrow inserts a new row.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I did.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Okay.
I know.
Don't want to do.
Oops. Yeah. I just press buttons and then eventually I get it there.
Eventually you get what you want. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's one way of not getting to the heading.
Yeah.
With option up arrow.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
You learn something new every day, or you get to relearn it. Oh yeah, it's this.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you end up adding a bunch of rows, well, you just don't say that.
You can always undo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Command Z is your friend.
Right.
Oops, fixer.
I know, and I love how you can undo more than once. The Mac undo is very, it's very consistent.
Usually you can undo into the last, time you've saved.
Yeah.
So like you can usually go back quite a ways.
Yep.
Quite a ways. It's got a good buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter the program either.
Is there a place to see where your undos are? Like a log of it?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't.
I don't think so.
I don't know of one. That'd be cool, but
somebody should could create a service. We were talking about services last week.
I don't think how that would even work. Because how would you show the differences? Yeah. I think you'd have to use some sort of thing, and that would be because anytime I've ever used apps that show you like the differences between things, it's always a very visual thing, right? Like it's a very to show you, to represent the changes in things. That would be a tricky proposition, I think.
Yeah,
but
I was thinking of something like
somewhere
track changes or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. All right.
Well, yeah, there would be a log, but it might not be a human readable thing, because it probably is keeping track of everything it's changed, right? But whether that's something that a person could read, or whether that's just something internal to the operating system.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Sonia. One more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I know the answer, but I'm not succeeding. Okay, so I'm still having mail appear on both my Mac and my iPhone, and this has been going on, and I know we're supposed to do the IMAP setting, and it's set that way, but yet I'm deleting things twice. So what is wrong?
You're
weird.
Sure you're not using POP somewhere? You're using IMAP in both places.
Yeah, that's
okay.
what's so
all right.
I've seen
no, that's a good question. I mean, So I go and check on my phone and I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, I actually was so proud. It's like, oh, I know what to do, but it's not working.
Brad, I think
This
Brad
is
maybe
Brad.
has
Have you
something.
tried? Sometimes I have deleted things from mail on my phone, but they're still on my Mac, or vice versa. On the Mac, I find that if I try changing mailbox and go back to the original one, sometimes that fixes it. Other times, I just have to try checking all mail, Command
Shift N.
Command Shift N, and sometimes I just close the app and reopen it, and that tends to do.
This is Darcy.
And then go ahead, Darcy.
Well, I was just going to say one thing you can always do if you're, because sometimes, you know, if you're deleting a bunch of stuff or moving a bunch of stuff, might take a little while. If you go into the activity window, which I think you get to with Command 0, you can see if it's still doing stuff. Sometimes it might not be, you might not understand what it's doing, but if it's doing, like if the table has stuff in it, and it might be just hung up on something. So that's also something to look at too, if you're, you know, deleting stuff and it's not going away right away. It used to be really bad with Gmail. Like, you know, you delete stuff and it might come back, or it seems to be way better about that now, but that used to be a big problem, you know, several Mac OS versions ago.
This is Sri.
Yes, Sri.
What does it vary if you're using the Mail app versus, let's say, for example, if Sandhya was using the Google app and not using the Mail app on both devices?
It shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't.
You're looking at an IMAP server. You're looking at what's on the server, so they're all looking at the same thing.
But so I'm just trying to think outside here. So if I deleted something on the Mail app on my computer is talking to a mail server somewhere out in La La Land for, let's say, Google. That's talking to one server, but would it be talking to another server to delete what's on her iPhone?
No.
Shouldn't.
No, what should happen is when you do something like you delete a message or you get new mail or whatever, it talks to the IMAP server. And when you make a change, then it goes and tells that IMAP server, okay, I've deleted this message. And then when you go into your phone looks at the IMAP server. It's like, tell me all the things that have changed, right? So then the things that deleted should reflect. Assuming everything is syncing properly, then which it sounds like it's not in Sandhya's case for some reason. But ideally, you know, when you make a change somewhere, it should almost instantly reflect. Like I've even looked at this before. Like if, you know, you have your inbox in both places, if you delete in one, the other one should almost disappear immediately.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not immediately, but fast enough.
Within a few seconds or within a minute for sure.
This is Sonia. That ain't happening. So
okay.
Sometimes I find if my email isn't updating, it's a simple matter of my Ethernet cord got unplugged or whatever.
That's a factor for sure.
It is, yeah.
But that's another tool in Mail on the Mac that's useful in addition to that activity window I told you about. If you go to under the window menu, there's a thing called Connection Doctor. And if you look in there, it'll show you if it can talk to all the different servers that it needs to talk to for mail. And if there's any errors, then that's another thing you can look at too. So.
Okay, I've seen that a couple of times. It'll say, I cannot send from this account or something. So.
Yeah, so there's something weird somewhere. Maybe you've gotten logged out. Maybe there's been a password thing.
Yeah, that was
you know, but that's ago. Those. Okay. Yeah, so the activity monitor window in Mail and the Connection Doctor are good places to look and see if something weird's going on.
Okay.
So this is straight. So one thing I noticed on my Mac is, especially with Google, it's telling me that I think it's connected. You know, in the assumption that my Google account is connected on my Mac, and I realize it's not connected, but I do see it connected on my iPhone. Meaning I'm getting my emails on my iPhone, but not getting my emails on my Mac. Till I went into the Mail, and it's almost like I had to sign back in.
Well, that happen. You can happen. I mean, you can get, for whatever reason, you can get signed out of stuff. That used to be a huge issue in iCloud, and still sometimes every so often it'll just randomly ask you, like, you need to give me your iCloud password. But that can happen, and that's why I'm saying, like, those two things that I suggested are good ways to see what's going on. Or if you go into your internet accounts in our old favorite system settings, you can see in there if you're still logged into your Google account or not.
How do you get to the doctor thing you were mentioning?
Oh, that's under the window menu in the Mail app. There's actually a bunch of useful little tools in there that you never hear people talk about, but there's some interesting stuff in there that you can. But yeah, Connection Doctor is the one, and I think also that activity monitor or activity viewer or whatever is also in the window menu in Mail. But yeah, those are two things to look at when something weird's going on with Mail on your Mac.
Definitely. And we are at the end of our time. So if you have any luck with any of those, looking at them, which I know Darcy's mentioned a few times, so I should really take a look. But if anybody wants to or does that, let us know for next time. And I'm not sure if our next meeting will be on December 20th or 27th, depending on when iBUG takes the holiday. But whatever it is, we will let you know, and we will see you back here in December. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully you can take advantage of some good Mac or other accessory deals coming up.
Thank you.
Chanelle.
Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you. Happy
We'll talk to you
Thanksgiving.
later.
Bye.
Alrighty, bye-bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.